Something changed in Northern Europe after 2022, and most people didn't notice it in real time. Sweden didn't roll tanks across borders. It didn't threaten anyone. It didn't make dramatic speeches. Instead, it did something far more serious. It rebuilt its military for war, joined NATO, and quietly positioned itself as one of the most dangerous specialists in cold region conflict. And that's why this question won't go away. Will Sweden help defend Greenland? And against who? Because the answer isn't simple, and it isn't what social media thinks. Let's start with what actually happened. Sweden has sent military personnel to Greenland. That part is true, but not battalions, not combat troops, not an invasion force. Sweden sent a very small number of staff officers as part of NATO and Danish-led planning and exercises in the Arctic. These officers were there to coordinate, plan, and integrate allied operations. That distinction matters. Sweden did not deploy forces to defend Greenland against the United States. There is no US invasion. The United States already operates in Greenland alongside Denmark as part of existing defense arrangements. Sweden's presence was cooperative, allied, and requested. So if Sweden is not rushing troops to Greenland, why does its military keep coming up in Arctic discussions? Because Sweden's power is not about occupation. It's about denial, integration, and making environments hostile to aggressors. And Greenland is exactly that kind of environment. To understand Sweden's role, you need to forget the old image of Sweden as neutral, passive, or demilitarized. That version of Sweden ended years ago. After Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, Sweden rapidly expanded defense spending, restored and expanded conscription, increased readiness levels, and hardened bases. These weren't emergency measures. They were accelerations of plans Sweden had quietly maintained for decades. Sweden has always assumed that if war came, it would be cold, fast, and brutal. That mindset shaped its entire military. Sweden joined NATO in 2024, and that decision fundamentally changed its role. Sweden is no longer preparing only for its own defense. It is now responsible for part of NATO's northern flank, including the Baltic Sea and Arctic approaches. This is where Greenland enters the strategic picture. Greenland is not defended by infantry standing on ice. It is defended by controlling access to it. Airspace, sea lanes, undersea routes, early warning, logistics. This is where Sweden becomes extremely relevant. Start with air power. Sweden operates one of the most survivable air forces in Europe. Its fighters are designed to operate from dispersed bases, highways, and austere runways. Swedish pilots train to land, refuel, rearm, and redeploy in minutes, often without permanent infrastructure. This doctrine was built during the Cold War to survive against a much larger adversary, and it translates perfectly to Arctic warfare. In a Greenland crisis, air operations would be constrained by distance, weather, and limited bases. Aircraft that can operate flexibly and survive disruption are invaluable. Sweden's Air Force is built for exactly that scenario. More importantly, by 2026, Swedish air units are fully integrated into NATO's command and data networks. They are no longer standalone defenders. They are part of a wider air picture that spans Northern Europe and the North Atlantic. That means Sweden doesn't need to go to Greenland to matter. Its aircraft can influence the fight long before boots ever touch the ground. Now let's talk about the sea. Sweden's navy is small, but it is designed to make life miserable for any adversary operating in cold, complex waters. Its surface ships and submarines are optimized for stealth, sea denial, and anti-submarine warfare. Swedish submarines are among the quietest, non-nuclear submarines in the world. They are designed to operate undetected in cold, shallow, acoustically challenging waters. In any scenario involving Greenland, undersea warfare would be decisive. Sweden's expertise in this domain adds a layer of uncertainty that no attacker wants. You don't need a massive fleet to deny access. You need the right tools in the right environment. Sweden understands that better than most. Now let's move to ground forces, because this is where Sweden's reputation quietly flips. Sweden reintroduced conscription not for symbolism, but for resilience. Its ground forces are trained to mobilize quickly, operate in winter conditions by default, and fight in dispersed, networked formations. Swedish soldiers train for cold weather as a baseline. Snow, darkness, and extreme temperatures are not special cases. They are normal operating conditions. If NATO needed troops capable of operating in Arctic or subarctic environments without months of retraining, Sweden would be one of the first countries considered. But again, Sweden does not deploy ground forces for political theater. It deploys them when there is a defined mission. That's why Sweden hasn't sent combat troops to Greenland, because Greenland is already defended within an alliance structure that is functioning. Now let's zoom out and talk history, because Sweden's military culture didn't appear overnight. Sweden was once a great power. In the 17th century, it dominated Northern Europe through innovation, mobility, and disciplined combined arms warfare. Swedish commanders pioneered tactics that reshaped European battlefields. That legacy never disappeared. It evolved. During the Cold War, Sweden built one of the most sophisticated domestic defense industries in the world, producing fighters, submarines, sensors, and artillery designed specifically for Sweden's geography and climate. Independence forced innovation. Innovation produced efficiency. Modern Sweden still benefits from that mindset. Its military is not flashy, but it is intelligent. Systems are designed to work together. Redundancy is built in. Assumptions are constantly challenged. That's why analysts often say Sweden punches above its weight. Now, let's address the big claim carefully. If Sweden fully committed to helping defend Greenland under NATO, would it be over for the aggressor? Sweden alone does not conquer regions. No medium-sized country does. But Sweden, as part of a NATO response, dramatically shifts the balance. Swedish air assets extend coverage. Swedish naval forces complicate access. Swedish ground troops hold key terrain in extreme conditions. Swedish planners reduce friction across multinational operations. That combination doesn't make headlines, but it wins wars. And now the political layer, because this is where misinformation usually explodes. Sweden's position on Greenland is clear. Sweden supports Danish sovereignty. Sweden supports NATO collective defense. Sweden does not engage in hypothetical conflicts between allies. The idea of Sweden defending Greenland from the United States is pure fiction. The United States is not an invader in Greenland. It is an ally operating there with Danish consent. The real scenario to consider is this. If a hostile power threatened Greenland and NATO activated collective defense, Sweden would act. Not alone, not dramatically, but quickly, competently, and in coordination with allies. That is exactly what Sweden's small deployment of officers to Greenland already demonstrated. Not conquest, integration. That's how modern power works. So why hasn't Sweden sent troops to Greenland? Because deterrence is already working. Because the alliance is already functioning. Because the strongest militaries don't move until movement is required. Sweden's military in 2026 is not about spectacle. It's about preparation, adaptability, and making aggression unattractive. It's about being so ready that the enemy never tests the system. And that is why Sweden is quietly one of the most important military players in Northern Europe today. Not because it wants war, but because if war ever comes to the Arctic, Sweden will not be learning on the job. It will already be ready.